Part 61. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 601. June was obviously another busy month for Her Majesty the Queen. First, the palace examination, and second, the daughter's one-year-old ceremony. The palace examination was no different from 3 years ago. First, the students went to the palace to meet the emperor, and then, under the watchful eyes of Her Majesty the Queen and all the civil and military officials, tables were set up in the square outside the palace, and all the students took 2 exams fairly. One was to answer questions, and the other was to write essays. Her Majesty the Queen and the Emperor sat outside the palace, and all the officials stood on the left and right. Under the watchful eyes of the public, no one could cheat for personal gain, and even couldn't speak unless necessary. This was an extremely fair and harsh exam. After the 2 exams, the students stood up and waited. The papers were marked and the essays were commented on in court. Most people's eyes fell on Chi Yu's face. It was this handsome young man who had been very close to Lord Shen recently. I don't know what kind of relationship the two had in private. If he had no real talent, then he must have won the 2nd place in the spring examination because of some unspeakable relationship. Everyone's suspicious eyes fell on the 2 of them. Chi Yu was not slow, and naturally could feel the gazes with implicit doubts and speculations. She couldn't help but blame Shen Zongjin again. If it weren't for him, how could she be looked down upon by others? After the comments of Her Majesty the Queen, Her Majesty the Emperor, Prince Rong, and several ministers in the court, the final result shocked all the officials. Chi Yu was selected as the top scholar. Yu Qiubai was the 2nd place. Lu Shen was the 3rd place. This result shocked all the civil and military officials in the court. What ability did Chi Yu have that made Her Majesty the Queen select her as the top scholar? As everyone knows, these students who came from all over the world to enter the imperial city are actually on par in the fixed answer sheet. They have read the 4 books and 5 classics countless times. What really determines their first-class ranking is actually the essays they wrote in the palace examination. The answer sheet only shows a person's level of knowledge. Their writings can reveal their vision, perspective, character, and temperament. The ministers all knew that the current empress had the world in her heart, and Yu Qiubai, as a student from a noble family at the foot of the imperial city, naturally knew this. Therefore, many students, including Yu Qiubai, wrote articles about governing the country and benefiting the people. First, they had a big vision, and second, they could make His Majesty happy. The civil and military officials in the court also knew that the boy from the Yu family must have made sufficient preparations, and they also thought that the top scholar must be him. Unexpectedly, it was Chi Yu who won the top scholar. Everyone couldn't help but be curious about what Chi Yu wrote. Chu Qinghuang didn't play tricks, and quickly passed Chi Yu's article to several ministers to read. After reading it, Prince Rong slowly nodded, obviously in agreement. After reading it, the other ministers were either surprised or frowned, but they also instantly understood why Chi Yu could get the top scholar in this palace examination. Because he did what he liked. The level of Chi Yu's article and Yu Qiubai's article is actually comparable. The only difference is that one is about governing the country and the other is about proposing the issue of women entering the government. Even the title of the article is called, "Daughters Can Also Be Self-Reliant." The article expounds on the pattern of the Queen's mind for the world, the admiration and recognition of her skill in governing the country with both kindness and power, and the happiness of the people of Ziki for having such a wise queen. Taking this as an example, it expresses the regret and pity of some talented and ambitious daughters who are bound by rules and etiquette. The writing is outstanding, the words are appropriate, and the emotions are also rendered just right. Then it begins to express the view on women entering the officialdom, believing that women should not be buried, as well as the advantages of women entering the officialdom and the benefits after entering the officialdom. The logic is clear and targeted. It seems that people can't even find a point to refute. Everyone instantly understood why she was able to get the top prize, not because of how good the proposal was, nor because of how outstanding her writing was, although it was indeed outstanding. But the real reason is that she wrote to the heart of Her Majesty the Queen. The ministers looked at each other and wanted to raise objections, but they still remembered clearly that Her Majesty had proposed in the palace that women could also serve as officials. If they refuted Chiyu now, wouldn't it be a refutation of Her Majesty in the court? Besides, Her Majesty had already selected the top scholar, didn't it mean that she approved of Chiyu's article? If they opposed at this time, it would be an open opposition to Her Majesty. What if Her Majesty got angry? The ministers who could stay in the court safely 3 years after Chu Qinghuang ascended the throne were either too smart or knew how to protect themselves. They would never take risks at this time. Contradicting Her Majesty in front of the world's students would definitely be courting death. Moreover, Chiyu also said that women rule the world is not inferior to men rule the world. Such an article is simply trampling on the male emperors of all dynasties, praising the current empress, which is undoubtedly flattering. Even bluntly said, if women are determined to pursue a career in government, they can reduce disputes in the boudoir, which is beneficial to the world and can also make the family harmonious, killing two birds with one stone. What a good way to kill two birds with one stone. The ministers were very upset, and they all thought that Shen Zongjin had taught them the tricks and deliberately asked Chiyu to write such an article. They wanted to say something, but the queen made the final decision. The emperor's husband also thought that this proposal was very good, which could improve the status of women and allow women to have a place in the official career, and it could also stimulate the ambition of men. After all, if a man is inferior to a woman in the court, it will undoubtedly be a big blow to the pride and self-esteem of men. If they can be inspired to work hard from now on, it will obviously be more than just killing two birds with one stone. After the Qianglan banquet, Chiyu, Yukaiubai and Lu Shen went to the imperial study to listen to government affairs. After the queen determined the official positions, she ordered people to draft an edict. Just like the rule 3 years ago, the top 3 students will stay in the imperial study for training, and the rest will be assigned to various departments, starting from the bottom, and those with outstanding abilities will be promoted slowly in the future. The students knelt down to thank him. Chu Suans, Wen Zhan, Shen Kongjin, Chu Qinghuang raised her eyes. Each of you pick 3 students to take with you and teach them how to be an official. If your students make mistakes in the future, the punishment as a teacher will be doubled. Wen Zhan and Shen Kongjin stepped forward to receive the order. The other ministers lowered their eyebrows and eyes, and they had already guessed that His Majesty was letting Wen Zhan and Shen Kongjin accompany his own assistants and truly develop the cohesion of the young upstarts. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 602. The 3rd day of June is my daughter's first birthday. However, because the palace examination was delayed, Her Majesty the Queen held a ceremony for her daughter in Changming Palace on the 8th day of June. In addition to the Queen, the Emperor's husband and several princes of the clan, several important officials from the cabinet and the court were present. The form of the royal family's ceremony has always been similar, with nothing new. On the long table were placed various objects representing meanings, including jade seals, memorials, fans, abacus, rattles, jade pendants, daggers, and several beautiful jewelry. The adults stood on both sides of the long table. Fu Kang put his daughter on the long table, pointed to the dazzling array of objects on the table, and said, "Take whatever you like." Jin Yu, who was already 1 year old, walked from one end to the other and back again with her short legs. A pair of innocent eyes like gems looked at the things on the table curiously. She squatted down and touched the jade seal, which made the ministers tremble with fear. Then she gave up the jade seal and touched the rattle instead, which made the ministers smile knowingly and secretly thought that she was really a child. However, soon, she put down the rattle, stood up, and continued to look back and forth at the surprising objects. She seemed to like everything on the table, but also seemed to dislike none of them. She touched this and touched that, which made the ministers' hearts flustered. Not long after, everyone saw her walk to the corner of the table, squatted down tremblingly, grabbed the yellow silk spread on the table, and pulled it suddenly in front of many eyes. With a clattering sound, all the objects slid to the middle position. The ministers were startled and hurried to the table to watch, fearing that precious objects such as jade pendants would be damaged. "Don't be nervous," Chu Qing Huang said, and one sentence stopped the ministers from trying to stop Jin Yu. "Let her play on her own." The ministers had to step back. The 1-year-old little princess staggered to another corner of the table, grabbed the tablecloth and pulled it, and then continued to the next corner. After repeating the same action 4 times in a row, all the objects on the table were wrapped in yellow silk. Then Jin Yu walked to the middle and sat down. Everyone was stunned, and no one spoke for a long time. "The little princess wants it all?" Chu Qing Huang was also a little surprised. She turned her head and looked at Fu Kang, and then laughed. "My daughter is really not greedy." "Jin Yu is great." Fu Kang reached out and picked up his daughter, and happily kissed her on the face. "The whole world belongs to Jin Yu. With the world in her heart, she will definitely be an unparalleled empress in the future." As soon as the voice fell, the faces of the ministers present changed instantly. "Empress? So, Her Majesty the Queen and the Emperor's husband both intend to make the princess the crown prince? How can this be done? In the past, there was a Chiyu who wanted to improve the status of women and allow them to enter the government. Later, there was a princess who grabbed the whole world in her hands. After a few decades, did Ziki directly become a country where women were superior to men? No, it can't be done. Absolutely not. They must insist on the system of men being superior to women, and never let women be superior to men. Isn't this a mess? My son will become a great man." Her Majesty pretended not to know what the ministers were thinking, and immediately announced that Jin Yu would be the crown prince. He was born to be a king, destined to rule the world in this life, and will surely make Ziki more prosperous. Your Majesty, please think twice. No need to think twice. Chu Qing Huang interrupted the minister who was speaking. Yuan Bao, draft the decree immediately. Yes. The ministers knelt down hurriedly. Your Majesty, this is absolutely inappropriate. Why? Chu Qing Huang's eyes turned cold. Do you think women can't be emperors? I dare not. I can be a good emperor, and my daughter can do the same. Chu Qing Huang looked down at the ministers in front of her, her tone as cold as ice. Whoever dares to oppose, I will dismiss him from office. She was not interested in using her kindness to influence their stubborn mentality. When it was time to be tough, no one could be tougher than her. Chu Qing Huang did what she said. The next morning, at the court, it was announced that Princess Jin Yu, the protector of the nation, would be appointed as the heir, and no one could object. Anyone who dares to object, take off your official uniform immediately and get out of the court. Chu Qing Huang said in a strong tone, not allowing any objection. My decision cannot be questioned by anyone. The ministers were silent. After returning home last night, they privately discussed countless ways to make the Empress withdraw her order, but at this time they could not say a word. Her Majesty has been on the throne for 3 years, and her temper is indeed much better than before, and she is much more tolerant. She no longer beats, kills, and confiscates property at will, but compared to this, the majesty of the Emperor has become stronger and stronger in the past 3 years. Every morning, when sitting on the dragon chair, the ministers can feel the pressure. They don't need to speak harshly, and they dare not be presumptuous. It has been a long time since she was so tough today, which shows how determined she is to make the princess the heir. What's more, next to Her Majesty is the Emperor's husband who always supports Her Majesty unconditionally. I rule the world to make it prosperous and the people healthy, not to sit on the throne and enjoy glory and be worshipped. Chu Qing Huang said slowly, I hope that the ministers in the court can have the same idea as me. Long live the emperor. No one can live to be 10,000 years old, but I will do everything I think is right during my lifetime, and it is useless for anyone to oppose me, she said coldly. No matter what you think about the crown prince, no matter what worries you have, I will say this today. It is my decision to make Jinyu the crown prince. If she has my courage and ability in the future, I will insist on making her the emperor even if everyone in the world opposes her. If she is unteachable and not a talent for the emperor, I will appoint another crown prince. You don't need to worry about these things too early. The ministers bowed their heads and said, My emperor is wise. Resignation. Farewell to Her Majesty, long live the Queen. Farewell to His Majesty, long live the Emperor. Back in Changming Palace, Fu Kang picked up Chu Qing Huang and kissed her on the face. Long live the Emperor. My dear, please stand up. Chu Qing Huang rewarded him with a kiss and motioned him to put her down. Jin, you really didn't disappoint me. Well done. The nurse brought the little princess over. Chu Qing Huang took her and held her in her arms, looking at her little face. You really have the demeanor of a mother. This throne is reserved for you. Fu Kang looked at the mother and daughter, his eyes full of tenderness. The succession is only temporarily decided. Next, I plan to take Jinyu and you back to Yan country. Fu Kang was surprised, going to Yan country. Yes, Chu Qing Huang nodded, I said I was going before, but I haven't been free. Let's go to Yan country when the weather is cooler. Fu Kang understood what she meant and sighed, I know Nuanuan loves me, but I didn't grow up in Yan country since I was a child, and I don't have any feelings for Yan country. Nuanuan doesn't need to do it for me. It's one thing to have no feelings, but it's another to get the recognition of the people of Yan country, Chu Qing Huang said. Besides, whether there is feelings or not, the king and queen of Yan are both your parents, so it is only right for us to visit them. Fu Kang thought for a moment, okay, I'll listen to you. You sound reluctant. Chu Qing Huang glanced at him, I favor you so much, how should you express it? I will sleep with you tonight, and your majesty will ravage me in all kinds of positions. Chu Qing Huang frowned, say less about food and drink in front of your daughter. Fu Kang turned his head to look at his daughter. Little Jinyu was held in her mother's arms. Her face was as delicate as a jade doll, crystal clear and pink, as if it was carefully molded by God. It was really beautiful. The more Fu Kang looked at his daughter, the more he felt that she was a fairy descending to the earth. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 603. The palace examination is over, and so is the ceremony of holding Jojo for my daughter. Chu Qing Huang and Fu Kang devoted themselves to busy government affairs again. Chi Yu officially entered the imperial study and became the new imperial study to participate in politics together with Yu Kaiubai and Lu Shen. 3 years ago, the top three were involved in politics in the imperial study. Zhong Zongjin warned Chi Yu in private, now that Chu Suans, Wen Zhan and Yun Heng have all joined various ministries, you must also work seriously. Chi Yu looked at him expressionlessly and nodded slowly, thank you, Mr. Shen, for the tip. How do you think about what I told you before? Kyo said, what's the matter? Zongjin looked at her calmly. Oh, I forgot, Chi Yu said calmly, looking left and right. Students have just passed the palace examination, so they should work hard and focus on court affairs and not be too indulged in the personal affairs of their children. Zhongjin was about to raise his hand to hit her on the forehead, but Chi Yu dodged it. Master Shen, please respect yourself. If you are seen and reported to Her Majesty the Queen, you and I will not be able to bear the consequences. Don't worry, Zhongjin pinched her face instead, if someone really files a complaint, I will bear all the consequences. Can you bear it? Zhong Zongjin smiled, anyway, I won't let you be implicated. Kyo was silent for a moment, her eyes falling on his face. Frankly speaking, Zhong Jin was really talented and good-looking, otherwise he would not have been favored by the princess and became a servant based on his face. According to the standard of ordinary women looking at men, Sheng Jin was good in everything, good-looking, and good at teasing others, and occasionally acted carelessly to tease others, which could just make the waiting girl blush with heartbeat. It doesn't matter that he was born a bastard. Anyway, his current status is not low, and he may rise in the future. By then, he will be the head of the family, and there is no need to worry about the difference between a bastard and a bastard. Chi Yu was absolutely certain that with Zhong Jin's current conditions, it wouldn't be too difficult to marry a noble daughter from a wealthy family. Why did he fall in love with her, a woman from out of town? I have no power in the imperial capital, and I am a daughter. I really have never thought about getting married. Kyo lowered her head and looked at her toes. Master Shen actually has many women to choose from, you don't have to be here. I'm a waste of time and I'm not a good wife. There are many women of the right age in the imperial capital, and there are indeed many that I can match, but they are not you. Zhong Jin said seriously, when it comes to choosing a wife, every word I say to you is sincere. A boudoir woman who does not need a husband and a child, but is willing to give absolute freedom to the person she likes. She will not be asked to take off her official uniform and live in the house at any time, nor will she be forced to do anything she does not want to do. Kyo said nothing. You said you are not ready yet, I understand, but I still hope you have time to think more and don't deal with me. Zhong Jin smiled helplessly, you see, I am not too young. Too old? Kyo blurted out and asked, how old are you? 25. That's indeed not young. Chi Yu frowned, you are 8 years older than me, and you can be my uncle. Zongjin. No wonder you keep urging me. Kyo muttered in a low voice, it turns out that I am worried that no one will want me because I am too old. Zongjin. Is he very old? I will seriously consider this matter, she said, but you must agree to one condition. Zhong Zongjin quickly said, you say it? Does the Imperial Study Room stay with His Majesty every day? That's right. Zhong Zongjin nodded, His Majesty will go to the Imperial Study Room to discuss matters after going to court every day. You must arrive at the Imperial Study Room on time before His Majesty. Even if His Majesty does not go, you must still be on duty in the Imperial Study Room, looking through the files and sifting through them. Excerpts, read books, copy articles, and find something to do by yourself. In the process, you must learn to understand His Majesty's habits in handling government affairs and the preferences of ministers in the DPRK. Anyway, things are very complicated, and you need to listen and read more. Think more, talk less. Kyo nodded, so my condition is that you don't come to me for a walk if you have nothing to do. This will not have a good influence. Zongjin. Chi Yu continued, I work in the royal study, and you work in the official department. We don't interfere with each other. We don't have to meet each other unless there is anything particularly important. If we meet occasionally, if I don't talk to you, try not to take the initiative to talk to me. It's not good if people misunderstand. Zongjin. He is already chasing his wife, and is he afraid of being misunderstood? He usually has to avoid meeting each other, and even if he does meet, he can't take the initiative to talk. Then he has to wait until the year of the monkey to marry his beloved wife. After Chi Yu finished speaking, she planned to leave. I'm going back first. Zhong Jin frowned, how long do you need to think about it? Give me a clear time. Kyo thought for a while, 3 months. Really? Really? Okay. Zhong Zongjin nodded, I will ask you again in 3 months. If you still have this attitude, then, I will have no choice but to ask your Majesty to grant me a marriage. Chi Yu frowned, wanting him not to threaten her, but thinking that getting rid of him was the most important thing at the moment. She really didn't want to get too entangled with him anymore, and people would really think he was a broken sleeve if they saw her. So he nodded and left quickly. Zhong Jin looked at her back and clicked his tongue. "Have you fallen in love with him?" a voice sounded from behind, with a hint of teasing and teasing. "Why do you fall in love with a young man even though there are so many women you don't like?" Shen Zongjin turned around and looked at Wen Zhan, who appeared in the corridor at some point. He raised his eyebrows and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes?" Wen Zhan frowned. "I just like young men." Shen Zongjin turned around and left leisurely. "If there is nothing to do in the Ministry of Revenue, you can go back earlier to accompany your little princess. If there is something to do, your blatant laziness is not the behavior of a loyal official." Wen Zhan looked at him thoughtfully. After a moment, he turned his head to look in the direction where Chi Yu left, frowning slightly. "Is your eyesight bad?" Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 604. At the beginning of August, Chu Qinghuang and Fukang handed over the government affairs. The government was managed by King Rong and the cabinet. The ministers of various ministries assisted King Rong. Chu Suans, Wen Zhan, Zhong Zongjin, and Yun Heng were responsible for the various centers. Fukang personally selected 100 elites and took his daughter back to Yan Kingdom with Chu Qinghuang. Although the country of Yan is small, its folk customs are generally good. Weak countries have no right to speak. They were once controlled by northern Xinjiang for nearly 100 years. They finally ushered in the demise of northern Xinjiang and were completely out of its control. However, they wanted to change some concepts and ideas for a while. Cognition is still not an easy thing. The return of the Yan Crown Prince does not seem to be a happy thing for the Yan Kingdom ministers, because the Yan Kingdom is discussing the establishment of a new Crown Prince. King Yan has never let go, but King Wei Wuxuan, even though he has been on the throne for 20 years, still does not have a strong and decisive approach. Faced with the minister's suggestions from time to time, and the various family forces behind his sons, he has always been "I have a bad headache." Although the arrival of Chu Qinghuang and Fukang was beyond everyone's expectations, it was really a surprise for Wei Wuxuan. The king led the ministers of the Yan Kingdom to personally greet them outside the royal city. They looked at the couple who got off the carriage with fear, and couldn't help but wonder for a moment. Both of them riding in a carriage. Didn't it mean that Her Majesty the Empress of Ziki and her husband are so powerful in martial arts that few people in the world can rival them? Why don't the two of them ride horses? It wasn't until they saw Fukang walking out of the carriage with a child in his arms that they instantly understood what was going on. However, their crown prince holds the child in person? Where is the promised royal husband? The royal husband who is so dignified as a father actually holds the child in person? No wet nurse, no maid, no nanny. Behind the carriage were hundreds of black-clad guards, all of whom were top-notch warriors. Her Majesty the Queen has come a long way, and it is really rude for me to miss you so much. Wei Wuxuan led the people forward to salute, "Little Wang." "Your Majesty, there is no need to be polite." Chu Qinghuang spoke in time, stopping him from being polite. "Fukang and I should have come over a long time ago, but due to busy government affairs, we have not been able to get away. I hope your Majesty will not sorry." Wei Wuxuan said hurriedly, "Don't dare." The ministers of the Yan Kingdom respectfully saluted the Queen and her husband, and quietly looked at Her Majesty the Queen. Their hearts were slightly shaken. They were surprised at the Queen's young age, and were also frightened by the powerful momentum of the Queen. Even though she spoke to the king in a gentle manner, she could not hide the intimidating aura she showed around her. As for their crown prince, he seemed much calmer than when he came back last time, and his aura was no longer as cold as ice, but standing with Her Majesty the Queen, he seemed to be a perfect match. The group of people turned around and walked towards the royal city. "This is my and Fuekang's daughter." Chu Qing Huang took the child and handed it to King Yan. "What do you think, Your Majesty? Does she look like me or Fuekang?" Wei Wuxian looked at the child in her arms, feeling a little shocked. Her Majesty the Queen was not like this in Ziki. He knew full well that she was trying to give Fuekang face, so he was very polite to his father, the royal husband, and even brought his children to show him. This is his granddaughter. It would be fine if the queen had a gentle temperament, but she was originally a cold and indifferent woman, and the fact that she could do this for Fuekang was enough to prove the importance of Fuekang in her heart. Wei Wuxian felt a little emotional. Looking at the little girl in his arms, she must be just over a year old. Her little face is so pretty, and she looks like a little fairy. She is the exact replica of Fuekang and Chu Qing Huang after they were combined. The little princess looks more like Her Majesty the Queen, a nearby minister said with a smile. Look at her facial features and demeanor. She looks so much like Her Majesty the Queen. Others followed suit. Chu Qing Huang and Fuekang were calm and composed. Their daughter was their daughter. No matter who she looked like, she was their treasure. Just listen to the flattery of these ministers. There was no need to take it to heart. The queen came at the right time. Wei Wuxian held the child in his arms and started talking about business. "The adults and I were discussing the crown prince yesterday." The ministers following behind him were shocked when they heard this. Why did the king start talking about business before he even entered the palace? Isn't it inappropriate to bring up the matter of establishing a crown prince in front of Her Majesty the Queen? Crown prince, Chu Qing Huang pretended not to notice the sudden change in the expressions of the ministers and smiled lightly. "What's wrong with the crown prince?" Wei Wuxian said, "Fuekang came back to the Yan kingdom 2 years ago. After becoming the crown prince, he returned to Ziki and never came back." The adults all thought that since the Yan crown prince married His Majesty Ziki and became a couple, they would become 11 Qi from now on. Now that he is from Qi, Yangguo should establish another crown prince. Establish a new crown prince? Chu Qing Huang raised an eyebrow. Why should we establish a new crown prince? The ministers looked at each other. Didn't the king just tell the reason? Wei Wuxian coughed lightly. What the ministers mean is that Fuekang is already from Ziki. Fuekang is the emperor's husband of Ziki, but he is also the crown prince of Yan kingdom. Chu Qing Huang said in a calm tone, "I'm afraid it would be inappropriate to establish another crown prince." The expressions of the Yan kingdom ministers changed again. "Why is it inappropriate?" Wei Wuxian frowned. "Actually, what I mean is to establish another crown prince. In this way, Fuekang can stay in Ziki to assist His Majesty without worrying about the affairs of Yan kingdom. I don't think there is a more suitable crown prince in the Yan kingdom than Fuekang," Chu Qing Huang said. "Other than Fuekang, no one else is suitable." Wei Wuxian was silent. "Okay, this is not what he objects to. It is what the Queen of Ziki said herself. If anyone in the court has the ability to protest, go and protest by themselves, don't come to him. Let's leave this matter to the palace and discuss it slowly." A minister spoke up at the right time to smooth things over, trying to temporarily change the subject. "Your Majesty and the royal husband must be tired after the long journey, and the little princess has also suffered from such a long journey. She needs to rest well now." "Yes, the king has asked people to prepare a grand banquet, and the food is ready. Your Majesty and the royal husband should take the little princess to rest well for a night, and we will discuss the business tomorrow." Wei Wuxian turned his head and looked at Chu Qing Huang. "What does Your Majesty mean?" "It doesn't matter, we can talk while eating later," Chu Qing Huang said lightly. "It's not hard to walk all the way, there is always a place to stay. Jinyu also got a good rest. The king and the adults don't have to worry." The adults had no choice but to nod, thinking about how to deal with this matter later while walking. As ministers of Yan, they naturally did not want their territory to become a vassal of a powerful country, but Yan was weak and could only rely on the protection of a powerful country. The marriage between Crown Prince Fukang and Queen Ziki was a good thing for Yan, at least there would be no worries about being annexed in the next few decades, but once people lost their sense of crisis, they could not help but start to have other ideas. Before Fukang returned to Yan, several princes had some ideas about the throne. After all, who didn't want to sit on the position above 10,000 people? Even a mosquito leg is meat, and although the country is small, no one is willing to be inferior to others. But no one expected that Fukang would get the crown prince position as soon as he came back, and he quickly returned to Ziki just after being appointed as the crown prince. People couldn't help but wonder if the queen was behind this, with the purpose of getting Yan without bloodshed. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 605. Arriving at the palace of Yan State, Wei Wuxian and the ministers of Yan State warmly entertained the distinguished guests. All the visible people around, whether ministers, princes, or just the palace servants serving on both sides, all had welcoming smiles on their faces, and even the princes who wanted to compete for the throne and the ministers of the noble families behind them did not show any strange colors. All the real thoughts were hidden in their hearts. Unfortunately, they did not know that Her Majesty the Queen had a special ability. "The little princess is so beautiful," someone at the table spoke first, breaking the quiet atmosphere. "She is born noble and has the bearing of Her Majesty the Queen." Chu Qinghuang sat in the distinguished guest seat, and when he raised his eyes, he saw several princes of Yan State opposite him. No need to introduce them specifically, just looking at their appearance, you can tell that they are princes of Yan State. Several princes look a bit like Wei Wuxian, and they are all young and handsome. It is true that Yan State produces beautiful women. "This is my third son, Wei Zhao." Wei Wuxian raised his hand to introduce. The two are Wei Chen and Wei Xian. The three princes stood up and bowed together. "Hello, Her Majesty." Chu Qinghuang hummed, not knowing whether he was happy or angry. The three hesitated for a moment, looked at Fukang, and saluted reluctantly. "Hello, brother." Fukang was holding Jinyu on his lap, and was selecting palace delicacies for his daughter to eat. He just hummed faintly when he heard this. For these princes who were obviously hostile to him but did not dare to show it on their faces, he seemed too lazy to pay attention and his attitude was very cold. The atmosphere at the table was awkward for a moment. 2 years ago, Wei Fukang's return to Yan Kingdom caused a huge wave. The reactions of the princes and ministers in the court were much more intense than today. The whole court was full of opposition, but Wei Fukang seemed to have no idea what was roundabout and what was power. Unexpectedly, he killed several important ministers in a row, and with the support of the uncle and several generals, he forcibly snatched the throne. Yes, in their opinion, Wei Fukang's position as crown prince was seized by violence. Even the fake Prince Wei Hung was said to have died in his hands. The ministers were not willing to accept such an unkind crown prince. They even imagined that if Wei Fukang really became the king of Yan in the future, their lives would be in dire straits and they would be worried all day long. So after hearing that Fukang married the queen of Ziki and became the husband of Ziki, they were half happy and half worried. They were happy that after Wei Fukang became the husband of Ziki, the crown prince of Yan might be replaced by someone else. They were worried that Ziki was becoming increasingly powerful, and if the queen was unwilling to give up Yan as a vassal, no one else could be Ziki's opponent. However, from what the queen said today, it was obvious that she was not happy to see the crown prince of Yan replaced. "Yan country is a feng shui treasure land," Chu Qinghuang said lightly. "After the fall of the northern frontier, Yan country has obtained the freedom you thought of. The crown prince of Yan country has married me. From now on, Ziki and Yan country will be a real family." Everyone echoed, "Your Majesty is right." Since we are a family, let's not talk about two sides. Chu Qing Huang said what she wanted to say, and she was too lazy to be hypocritical with them. The emperor is the one I like. I protect him, so I protect Yan country. If Yan country is not Fu Kang's master in the future, then Ziki will have no reason to continue to protect Yan country. When these words came out, everyone was shocked. No reason to protect Yan country? What does this mean? Whether to protect or not is not the most important thing, but they know in their hearts that the Queen's words do not mean the so-called protection at all, but that after losing the protection, the powerful country can instantly erode Yan country, so that Yan country will be like the northern frontier and completely belong to the territory of the powerful country from now on. Of course, with the current national strength of Ziki, the greatest probability is still to become a territory of Ziki. The faces of several princes became ugly. They thought the time was ripe and they could fight for the position. Who would have thought that the Queen of Ziki would choose this time to come to Yan state and express her attitude so domineeringly? Once she said this, who would dare to take the risk? Even their fathers did not dare. The ministers were awed, and when they thought of the generals who obeyed them in the court, they knew very well that as long as the Queen did not agree, none of them could change the status of the Crown Prince of Wei Fuqiang. Your Majesty has come from afar, and Yan state should treat you with courtesy. The uncle of the state raised the wine cup. Please rest assured about the matter of the Crown Prince, Your Majesty. The king has never agreed to change the Crown Prince, not before and not in the future. Even if the other ministers were unhappy, they did not dare to say anything. That's right. Wei Wuxian followed suit and raised the wine cup, a toast to Her Majesty the Queen. Chu Qing Huang replied, the king is the elder, the father of Fu Kang, it should be Fu Kang and I who toast the king. The uncle of the king saw that the queen was dignified as an emperor, but also reasonable. Public is public, private is private. Someone dared to covet Fu Kang's position as the crown prince, and Her Imperial Majesty made people feel awe. Putting aside state affairs, she also respected the king enough. And all this is just because of Fu Kang. At least it can be concluded that Her Majesty has a deep relationship with Fu Kang, and she should not have any intention of attacking Yan country for the time being. Thinking of this, he raised his glass to toast, and others followed suit. Then the guests and hosts were happy, and the atmosphere was quickly brought up. State affairs can be mentioned in passing, with polite words, formal words, flattering words. You say one thing and I say another. Most of the people who serve as officials in the court are scholars who have passed the exams based on their real abilities. They are good at writing and naturally have good eloquence. Chu Qing Huang, the only empress among the several countries, had a reputation that had spread throughout the countries. They were not only impressed by her, but also knew that this woman should not be provoked. They would never be stupid enough to provoke her at this time. A palace banquet ended in a lively manner, without any unpleasant feelings. Anyway, Chu Qing Huang and Fu Kangmei had no unpleasant feelings. They had no right to care whether other people were happy or not. After the palace banquet, Chu Qing Huang and Fu Kang went to the harem to meet Fu Kang's biological mother, the queen, who was a beautiful and gentle woman from aristocratic family. When Fu Kang came 2 years ago, he had no communication with her, and the queen did not take the initiative to meet Fu Kang. For 18 years, she had always regarded Wei Hung as her own son. No matter what Wei Hung's temperament was, she had watched the child grow up, and she chased him and fed him with food and water. But he went to Ziki and lost his life there. Then Wei Fu Kang came from Ziki, saying that he was her biological son who was switched since childhood. The queen couldn't accept this fact for a while, and she felt that she needed some time. But before she could calm down, Wei Fuqiang made a shocking move in the palace. He killed several important officials and took the throne of the crown prince directly. Then, he left Yan Kingdom without looking back, and his speed was beyond her expectation. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 606. Seeing Her Majesty the Queen at this time, she stood up and saluted. The Queen doesn't need to be polite. Chu King Huang's eyes fell on the woman's face, and when she saw a somewhat gentle and indifferent expression, she couldn't help but sigh. The Queen doesn't seem to welcome us. Wenwan is really gentle, with a soft and graceful temperament all over her body. Indifference is really indifference, as if she doesn't care about anything in the world anymore. There is a kind of calmness that doesn't matter, and she doesn't care about anything. The Queen was slightly startled, then shook her head. Her Majesty the Queen misunderstood. I am not unwelcoming, it's just that some don't know how to face it. She was even unfamiliar with Fukang, her biological son, not to mention that the Queen in front of her was a feared person. Your Majesty, please take a seat. The Queen raised her hand, her eyes falling on Fukang's face next to her. Crown Prince, please take a seat. Fukang didn't say anything, and the two of them sat down on the chairs together. The palace servants served tea and then left. The king and queen sat aside and were silent for a while. Wei Wuxian said, the queen has not cared much about outside affairs in the past 2 years. Today is the first time she has seen Fukang. If there is anything wrong, I hope the queen will do it. Your Majesty, thank you very much. Chu Qinghuang could understand. How is the Queen Mother? My mother is fine. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. The Queen looked at the child in Fukang's arms, with a smile on her lips. Is this the little princess of Ziki? Yes. Chu Qinghuang nodded. She is also the little princess of the Yan Kingdom. Fukang is the crown prince, and his daughter is indeed a little princess. The Queen said, can I give you a hug? Sure. Chu Qinghuang turned to look at Fukang, who handed the child to her. The Queen looked at the child in her arms, then looked up at Fukang. Her eyebrows softened a bit. She looks a bit like Fukang. She is Fukang's child, so naturally she has some similarities. The blood relationship cannot be erased. The Queen's eyebrows were lowered, and she didn't know what she was thinking of. She said sadly, it was me who was useless and failed to protect my child. She failed to protect her biological son. Instead, she raised other people's children as her own for so many years. It was not unknown to her that her adopted son was ambitious, but after so many years of love, she died in the hands of her biological son. She couldn't accept it emotionally for a while, but she understood intellectually that the people involved in it were dead, and it was meaningless to pursue right and wrong now. She just knew that wherever there was a conflict of interests, whether it was Ziki or Yan state, there would be conspiracies and various means. For his own ambition, Wei Hong was willing to be used by the emperor of northern Xinjiang and took the initiative to send people's heads to Ziki, where he was eventually buried. Perhaps this was his fate. 2 years was enough time for her to accept this fact, but after her adopted son died, she sadly discovered that her biological son didn't seem to care about the father and queen of the Yan Kingdom. For a long time, the queen felt that there was no hope of living. However, when I saw this little girl in my arms, with her small face, big eyes, such beautiful eyebrows, and such noble charm, she was so similar to her son when he was a child, and a soft feeling in my heart was suddenly awakened. The Queen's eyes were faintly red. I don't know what's going on. In fact, I should have thought of it a long time ago. My son's appearance will be completely different when he grows up than when he was a child. I, actually never noticed. She was such a failure as a mother. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, 30 years ago in the Yan Kingdom, there was a national master who was good at soul stirring. He was best at pretending to be gods and ghosts. Although he died later, he might have been involved when things happened. The late Ziki the Queen Mother cannot easily change the lives of 3 people on her own. There must be a master behind it. The queen is just a weak woman, and it is normal for someone to erase some memories. Don't blame yourself too much. The Yan kingdom was in such chaos that Wei Wuxian was not willing to mention the unpleasant past. But Chu Qinghuang was right. Yan kingdom and Ziki were so far apart that the princes of the two countries were replaced. It was not something that the queen mother, who was firmly in the palace, could do alone. The tricks of evil people are always hard to guard against. The reason we came here this time is to let Fukang get together with you. Chu Qinghuang held a teacup. He has been trained in the dark pavilion for more than 10 years. He is indifferent to all emotions and desires. It is not that he is indifferent to you, his biological mother, but his temperament. So, it's the same for everyone. The queen nodded slowly. He has suffered so much these years. Now the pain has finally come to an end. Chu Qinghuang smiled lightly. You don't have to feel bad. He is a strong person and never feels that he is suffering. Fukang nodded silently. Nuanuan was right. He has never felt bitter, but compared to the sweetness now, if he were allowed to go back to the past, Fukang thought about it, maybe he wouldn't be able to bear it. The two sat in the queen's palace for a while, casually chatting about some domestic matters. In the evening, the palace servants took them to rest. Chu Qinghuang said to Fukang, "We will stay here for a few days so that you can get familiar with your mother." Fukang hummed and listened to her arrangement. The ministers of the Yan kingdom want to change the crown prince, so it's faster to dream. Chu Qinghuang turned to look at her daughter and said to Jinyu, "The Yan kingdom is your father's dowry. In terms of the people's customs, it can be regarded as a gigantic treasure. There are a lot of beauties, you can come here to choose from." Jinyu played with Fukang's hair quietly. "According to my mother, my brother also likes to play with father's hair since he was a child." Chu Qinghuang looked at Jinyu thoughtfully. "Jinyu has the same habit as my brother. Does it mean that she is destined to be an emperor like my brother?" Fukang nodded in agreement. Nuanuan is right. Anyway, as long as it is said by Nuanuan, it is right or wrong. Chu Qinghuang glanced at him. The two of them lived in the best palace in Yan Kingdom under the guidance of the palace servants. It was quiet and peaceful. The palace garden was full of flowers. The palace corridors were winding and connected to small bridges and flowing water. It had a unique quiet style. Jinyu climbed on his father's shoulders, and a pair of clean and clear eyes looked around the environment, as if curious. "Jinyu likes it here." The little princess turned her head to look at her mother, blinked, and said nothing. "If you like it, I will build a palace like this for you after we go back." Chu Qinghuang dotes on her daughter without limit. "Do you want it?" "I want it made of gold." Chu Qinghuang was stunned, and Fukang also looked down at his daughter in his arms. "Gold?" Chu Qinghuang looked at her. "Why do you want it made of gold?" Fukang was surprised that his daughter suddenly spoke. "My daughter didn't like to talk much before, but today it seems that she really likes this place and is willing to speak actively." Chu Qinghuang has always been open-minded. "My daughter is so smart and clever, and she is too lazy to talk at first glance. There is nothing to worry about." After returning to Yangguo, the main text is finished, and there are not many extras. It is estimated that this book will be finished at the beginning of next month. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 607. Jinyu glanced at the two of them, then silently turned her head to look at the flowing water outside the arch bridge. "Daughter, you haven't said why you want gold." Fukang lowered his head and looked at her. "Do you want a palace made of gold?" Jinyu nodded. "With the abilities of my father and mother, I'm afraid they don't have such strong financial resources for the time being." Chu Qinghuang said calmly. "The golden cage is fine." Jinyu nodded and said, "Yes." Chu Qinghuang narrowed his eyes. "You want a golden cage?" What do you want a golden cage for?" Her Royal Highness the little princess turned her head and looked at her quietly. "Okay, I forgot that you are only more than a year old, and you probably can't explain fluently why you want the golden cage. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, we will talk about it when we go back to Ziki. Then you have to describe it to me. What kind of golden cage do you want? How big is it? What do you want it to be used for? Jin Yu tugged Fukang's hair and stopped talking. Are you starting to lose your temper at such a young age? Chu Qinghuang narrowed his eyes. I'm used to you. Fukang said, my daughter is still young, don't scare her. Chu Qinghuang's face was expressionless. Fukang coughed lightly, leaned over, and kissed her face. I was wrong, Your Majesty, please calm down. Jin Yu simply couldn't see it. When they walked to the front residence, the palace servants stopped and waited. When Chu Qinghuang and his family came closer, Fu Shen said respectfully, if Her Majesty the Queen has any needs, you can ask the maids of Feng Palace to do it. On the left and right sides of the palace garden stood several maids in pink clothes. The two leading maids were dressed in darker colors and looked older and calmer. They were obviously the female officials in the palace. Chu Qinghuang said calmly, I like to be quiet. Except for 3 meals a day and tea, I don't have to wait for you the rest of the time. Yes. Chu Qinghuang walked into the palace and turned to look at Fukang, am I a little too presumptuous? No. Fukang shook his head, I just like Nuanuan's majestic look. Chu Qinghuang sneered and walked into the inner hall. The child Jinyu was born relatively late and stayed in her mother's belly for 12 months. She was really lazy. She's a little late to talk, and she's a little late to walk. Well, strictly speaking, it's not too late to walk, but she doesn't really like walking, she likes to be held, and she's also very lazy. Today, I finally heard her take the initiative to express her thoughts. Both Fukang and Chu Qinghuang wanted to take this opportunity to communicate with her. After taking off his shoes and putting the child on the bed, Chu Qinghuang dragged a chair over and sat down. Jin Yu. Her Royal Highness the little princess blinked and looked at her innocently. My daughter is so cute. Fukang leaned over and kissed her face, and softened his voice unconsciously, why do you want a golden cage? Jinyu lowered her head and picked at her little blue skirt, ignoring him. Fukang and Chu Qinghuang looked at each other and were defeated by their daughter again. Little lazy boy, he obviously knows how to talk, but he just doesn't like to talk. Nuan, Fukang said, let's stay in Yan Kingdom for a few days, and then take our daughter to Dongling after we leave. What are you going to Tanglin for? Greetings to the Emperor, take Jinyu to meet his uncle. No need. Chu Qinghuang refused, Jinyu is still young and I don't want to take her around. Besides, my brother and I are both kings of a country now. Our family and country are our top priority, so we shouldn't waste time on the road. The two countries are far apart and it is not easy to travel back and forth. Moreover, with a child who is just over 1 year old, in order to prevent my daughter from being too tired from traveling, she must pay attention to rest on the way. As a result, traveling will be slower. On the premise of ensuring that my daughter is not tired, it will take at least 2 or 3 months to reach Tangling, and it will take half a year to come and go. Chu Qinghuang doesn't have that much time. What's more, Fukang is the youngest and junior in front of his royal brothers, so he can't help but lower his position, although this is what he should do. Chu Qinghuang still doesn't want to. So I won't go this year. In the evening, the queen came with someone and brought a cup of the special delicacies of the Yan Kingdom's palace. Along with her, there was a beautiful girl of 12 or 13 years old, wearing a pink dress, innocent and pretty. Your Majesty the Queen was polite and gentle, this is my daughter Wei Shuang, the younger sister of Crown Prince Fukang. She is 12 years old this year. She goes to a girls' school with other noble ladies during the day and comes back at night. The girl had obviously been warned in advance, and she bowed respectfully to Chu Qinghuang and Fukang, see Her Majesty the Queen, see Brother Wang. No need to be polite. Chu Qinghuang motioned the queen to sit down first, and then looked at the girl, Wei Shuang. Yes, the girl responded with a sweet and delicate voice, makeup for makeup. Chu Qing Huang smiled faintly, you look very good looking. Wei Zhuang was obviously very happy when she heard this. Thank you, Your Majesty the Queen, Your Majesty is also very beautiful. As he spoke, he quietly looked at Fukang. When he came 2 years ago, she had no interaction with her. Wei Zhuang thought that Brother Wang was scary and didn't even dare to get close. However, this time they met, she found that he seemed a little different from before. He's holding a little girl in his arms. Is she Brother Wang's daughter? Let's eat together. Chu Qing Huang stood up and sat at the table, took her daughter from Fukang's arms, and let her sit on his lap. We are all a family, there is no need to be formal. Wei Zhuang was sitting next to her mother. Occasionally she would glance at the little princess in Chu Qing Huang's arms and praise her in amazement. The little princess looks like a little fairy. Fukang started to prepare the dishes for Chu Qing Huang and his daughter. He divided them into 2 plates and put his daughter's small plate aside. Fukang silently glanced at his sister while serving the dishes. She is sweet and good at talking. Wei Zhuang said hesitantly, will the prince not marry another wife in the future? Fukang paused and frowned instantly. Just when she was said to be able to talk, she started talking nonsense. Zhuang what nonsense are you talking about? The queen hurriedly stopped her. The prince and the queen are already married, why would they marry another woman? Wei Zhuang said, I just asked casually. Fukang said indifferently, don't ask such boring questions in the future. Wei Zhuang shut up. After a while, she said weakly, there is a noble girl in the girls' school who likes the prince and wants to marry the prince. I heard that the prince was back this morning, so I asked him to ask, I didn't mean it. Fukang. Chu Qing Huang was in a bad mood. Someone liked her husband. She is quite courageous. However, Chu Qing Huang was quite gentle to the girl in front of her, and did not intend to vent her anger. Then the lady didn't know that your brother was already married. I know. Wei Zhuang glanced at Fukang quietly, and lowered her head nervously. She thought that the brother would not leave after he came back. Chu Qing Huang nodded. You can tell her when you go to the women's school tomorrow, just say that your brother is already the person of the Queen of Ziki, and will not have other wives in the future, not even concubines, so that she can give up this idea. Wei Zhuang swallowed and nodded repeatedly. Okay, I will convey it truthfully. Fukang added, when you tell her again, tell her that the emperor and I even have a child, so that she can find another good husband as soon as possible, and don't be delusional. Wei Zhuang looked down at her bowl and said weakly, yes, I will tell her every word. The queen listened to the couple's conversation silently, and sighed slightly in her heart. The two of them have a really good relationship, and even the way they express their feelings is overbearing. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 608. The meal went smoothly and the atmosphere was harmonious. Your brother will not come back to Yan Kingdom often in the future, but if you want to go to Ziki, you can go anytime. Chu Qing Huang glanced at Wei Zhuang. It doesn't matter how long you stay, I will have someone treat you well. Wei Zhuang's eyes lit up. Can I really go? Chu Qing Huang nodded. The queen smiled and said, she is just a little girl. What's wrong with a little girl? Chu Qing Huang said, I am also a girl, but I am still the queen. Yes, yes, Her Majesty is right. Wei Zhuang raised her head, her face suddenly brightened. The person I admire most is Her Majesty, she is simply a god that all women in the world look up to. Since Pangu created the world, no woman has been as powerful as Her Majesty. Chu Qing Huang was slightly stunned. Since Pangu created the world? Is it so exaggerated? Many girls in the girls' school admired the queen and thought she was amazing. Even a tough country like the northern frontier was defeated by the queen. We will no longer be bullied by the northern frontier, nor will we have to send girls to the northern frontier to please them. Zhuang the queen interrupted her helplessly, why are you so talkative today? Wei Zhuang paused, stuck out her tongue silently, and finally quieted down. It doesn't matter, the little girl is innocent and naive, I like her. Chu Qinghuang smiled lightly, women are not necessarily worse than men. Girls can do the same things that men can do. This year, a girl from Ziki participated in the imperial examination and successfully became the first female champion in the history of Ziki. Wei Zhuang opened her mouth in surprise, really? Chu Qinghuang nodded. It's amazing. Wei Zhuang admired her very much, she is so courageous. Not only is she courageous, but she is also very knowledgeable. She was able to stand out among so many men and become the first female champion, which is simply admirable. Ziki has the first empress in history, and now it has the first female champion in history. Wei Zhuang frowned and thought, Ziki seems to be lacking a female general. As soon as this was said, Chu Qinghuang raised her eyebrows, do you want to be a female general? Wei Zhuang was silent, then shook her head, I can't, I'm too stupid, I don't know anything. I'm really stupid. The queen couldn't help laughing, I've been taught the rules of the palace so many times, but I still can't learn them. I'm chattering all day long and don't look like a princess at all. Wei Zhuang raised her eyebrows, Her Majesty said that I'm just right like this, why do I need to learn so many rules? It's not fair to women to restrict their nature. The queen was helpless, you are so eloquent, can't I talk to you? Wei Zhuang pursed her lips and smiled, with a bit of pride. Chu Qinghuang glanced at the little princess, then at Fu Kang, thinking, if she hadn't been forced to leave Yan country by being swapped, would she be so innocent and romantic now? Innocent. Fu Kang glanced at the silly Wei Zhuang and fell into silence strangely. It shouldn't be, the queen said with a smile, girls and men are different after all. Men always have to have some sense of responsibility. Born in the royal family, sometimes they have no choice. If he had not been taken away by the substitution, he might have been a qualified crown prince, instead of being used by the emperor of Beijiang like Wei Hung, and even losing his life. Wei Zhuang was just a carefree little princess. When Beijiang was still there, she was also worried whether her daughter would be sent to Beijiang when she grew up. The royal family of Beijiang was a cannibalistic royal family. Fortunately, Beijiang was destroyed just when her daughter grew up. She breathed a sigh of relief for this, and Wei Zhuang could retain the nature of a girl and would not be sent to a dangerous wolf den to suffer torture. From this point of view, the queen was grateful to the queen in her heart, but the queen's eyes swept across Fu Kang's face, and she lowered her eyes. I am afraid that the mother-son relationship in this life is destined to be weak. After dinner, the mother and daughter left, leaving a quiet space for the family of three. The palace servants brought hot water, and Chu Qinghuang washed her sleepy daughter, put on her underwear, and Fu Kang carried her to the bed. Your sister is good. Chu Qinghuang sat down on the brocade couch, her voice leisurely and lazy, she is innocent and well protected, but fortunately, Beijiang has been destroyed, otherwise if she was sent there, I'm afraid she would be swallowed up without leaving any residue. Fu Kang put down the curtain and came over to sit beside her. Thanks to the queen's wisdom and bravery, Beijiang was destroyed in time, saving the lives of these girls in Yan country. Chu Qinghuang glanced at him, but I didn't expect that there was a woman in Yan country who was secretly eyeing you. It seems that you are quite charming. She is quite charming, and it's also because Nuan trained her well. Fu Kang was very smart, how can the fruits of Nuan's hard training be given away to others? Chu Qinghuang raised an eyebrow, your vocabulary needs to be improved. Fu Kang smiled and said, it's training. Have you ever seen real training? Chu Qinghuang narrowed her eyes, I can let you experience it. Fu Kang was silent for a moment, how to experience it? First, you need to prepare a whip and a pair of shackles. Chu Qinghuang said, if conditions permit, of course you can prepare some other tools. Fu Kang pursed his lips and smiled, I'll have someone send the things over. Chu Ching Huang. Why does it sound like you are looking forward to it? As expected, he is getting bolder and thicker. Pinching his face, Chu Ching Huang said, "This is in Yan country, pay attention to the dignity of the crown prince. Where does a weak country get its dignity? It is my responsibility as the crown prince to make Her Majesty happy." Fu Kang smiled, "If Her Majesty is happy, everyone will be happy." Chu Ching Huang glanced at him, "You speak as if I were a tyrant." "No, Your Majesty is a truly wise and enlightened monarch, the most powerful empress since Pangu created the world." Chu Ching Huang held his forehead, "Don't be glib." Fu Kang was silent, "Why doesn't it seem glib when others say it? You can also praise me a little more." In a naive tone, Chu Ching Huang thought about the tone and demeanor of the little girl when she spoke, and smiled faintly. The expression, eyes, and tone must be just right. Fu Kang was silent for a long time, and began to recall the demeanor of his cheap sister in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more he felt like a fool. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 609. Chu Ching Huang and Fu Kang stayed in the Yan kingdom for 6 days. They ate with the king and queen of Yan every day, chatted about business matters, and occasionally went out to see the customs of the Yan kingdom. After that, taking advantage of the crisp autumn air and comfortable weather, the two said goodbye to the king and queen. With Wei Zhuang's reluctant farewell, they took their daughter all the way back to Ziki. "Whenever I encounter a place with beautiful scenery on the way, I will stop for 2 days to look at the mountains, water, and beauties. Autumn is the harvest season." Chu Ching Huang would also take her daughter to watch farmers harvest crops, go deep into the folk to understand people's lives, and would ask farmers how much food they would have left after paying taxes. If the government imposed heavy taxes on its own initiative, it would be asking for death. "When I go to some towns, I also go out of my way to understand the people's livelihood and suffering. If there are ruffians and bullies running rampant in the countryside, they have stepped into the palace of the King of Hell. If they don't die during the day, Fu Kang will send them to meet the King of Hell at night." Ziki has changed a lot in the past 4 years. Many newly appointed officials have been replaced in various states and cities. Most of them are hard-working people, and there are obviously fewer corrupt officials. There will still be profiteers. After all, there will be no profiteers. However, the situation of collusion between government and businessmen has obviously improved, and occasionally some moths are still found. If the impact is significant, it will be dealt with immediately. If the impact is not significant, Chu Ching Huang will secretly note it down and replace it directly with suitable officials in the future. This process of understanding people's sentiments has brought them a lot of gains and feelings. "We will go out for walks more often in the future." Chu Ching Huang made the decision. The world is huge and there are many officials. Even if you have clairvoyance sitting in the temple, you can't see the whole world. There are always corners that your will cannot reach. An omission on one side has little impact on the country, but on the other side the people are in dire straits. For the country, corruption in a small town or even a state is not a big deal, but for the people of that town, that state, it may be hell. Yes, Fu Kang nodded. As Jinyu grows older, it will be good for her to take her out for a walk often. It is helpful to understand the livelihood of the people earlier, to know that the evildoers must be eliminated and the weak must be helped, and that the people of this country will be her people from now on, and the territory of this country will be her territory. Let her learn to be a king subtly. The couple worked together to cultivate their daughter's sense of kingship from an early age, regardless of whether her daughter wanted it or not. After playing this way, we have been playing until November. After Chu Ching Huang ascended the throne, almost half of his energy was spent on major political affairs. Now that he finally had the opportunity to take his daughter out for fun, he naturally wanted to have a good time. Jinyu doesn't like to talk much, but she likes to play. The child was also full of energy, and his physical condition was much better than Fukang and Chu Qinghuang expected. Not only did he not experience any cold or discomfort along the way, he also did not suffer from acclimatization. Both Chu Qinghuang and Fukang found that Jinyu looked much more comfortable outside than in the palace, and the expressions on her face looked much richer. So they secretly made a decision to take their daughter out every spring or autumn harvest season to play for 3 to 5 days or 10.5 months without delaying too long or going too far. The winter weather was too cold, so the family of 3 returned to the imperial capital of Ziki in mid-November. The weather is getting colder day by day, and autumn has passed and winter has ushered in, which heralds the end of this year. Chu Qinghuang summoned the ministers of the court to discuss matters in the imperial study. The ministers summarized everything that had happened during the period since Her Majesty the Queen left. Methodical and organized, one by one, handled extremely thoughtfully. My husband and I have been away for several months, but no one is slacking off. As soon as these words came out, the ministers all shuddered. I don't dare. Joke. Who dares to be lazy? Her Majesty the Queen has focused on cultivating young upstarts in the past 2 years, and she just catches the old ministers who commit crimes so that they can be dismissed immediately. They are diligent, love the people, and keep their own rules, so she cannot find a reason to dismiss them. Therefore, no matter whether the Queen is in court or not, they are determined not to leave any clues for her to catch. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 610. In the blink of an eye, another New Year's Eve is coming. The palace started to get busy early, with lanterns and colorful decorations, adding a sense of joy to the deserted palace. On the 20th day of the 12th lunar month, the Supreme Emperor took concubine Xian back to the palace. This time he came back with great fanfare, and even sent a letter in advance to welcome her. Naturally, the civil and military officials did not need to mobilize troops to greet him. Chu Qinghuang just sent the imperial guards out of the city to welcome the Supreme Emperor in. However, when the civil and military officials of the court heard the news that the Supreme Emperor was back, they were all in high spirits. The Emperor is back. If there is anyone in the world who can persuade the Queen to give up her decision to establish an imperial concubine, that person is the Supreme Emperor, and the Queen will not listen to other people's opinions at all. Although the Supreme Emperor may not necessarily stop it, or even stopping it may not change Chu Qinghuang's mind, there is at least a glimmer of hope. Arriving at the palace at noon, the emperor and concubine Xian went straight to Changming Palace because they had heard that Qinghuang had given birth to a daughter. Chu Qinghuang had already ordered someone to prepare a sumptuous lunch for the two of them. The emperor was so happy when he saw the little princess that he picked up this noble-looking child and said, "Is this my granddaughter? She looks really good." Good. Concubine Xian was originally worried that the child would give birth and wanted to remind the emperor to take it easy. Unexpectedly, the little child was held by the emperor without any resistance. Of course, she did not show any joy. Those eyes were clean and cold, a bit like her mother's. But it's a little different. Concubine Xian looked at the child. It was not the same as Chu Qinghuang when he was a child. If it was similar, it was more like the Qinghuang of today, but there was an indescribable weirdness about it. The Supreme Emperor hugged him for a while, then turned to look at Chu Qinghuang and hesitated for a moment. "Qinghuang, I heard that you have appointed this child as your heir apparent." Chu Qinghuang was ordering people to send the approved memorials to various ministries. Hearing this, he nodded casually, "Yes. She's a girl." "What's wrong with the girl?" Chu Qinghuang raised her head and glanced at him. "Am I not a girl too?" The Supreme Emperor laughed dryly. "That's different. I still think boys are more responsible and can shoulder the important responsibilities of the country." Girls are weak and should be pampered. Fuekang did not participate in the discussion between father and daughter, and walked over to see if there was anything wrong with the meal. Girls do need to be pampered. As for being weak, Chu Qinghuang said in a calm tone, please forgive me for being frank, the men of the Chu royal family are more delicate than the women. The Supreme Emperor was speechless for a moment. He wanted to say something more, but the little princess had already begun to protest, I don't want you to hold me. The Supreme Emperor, concubine Xian, Chu Qinghuang, and Fuekang all looked at the little princess. What happened? The Supreme Emperor was surprised, didn't you hug me well just now? Who told the father to say that girls are weak? Chu Qinghuang stood up and walked over, taking her daughter from his arms, Jinyu is unhappy. The Supreme Emperor. Such a young child actually has a temper? Jinyu is not weak, Chu Qinghuang said, she is stronger than me. Her Royal Highness the little princess quietly clung to her mother's shoulders, not even wanting to look at the old lady the emperor again. He didn't even get a greeting gift when he came back, so he just knew how to make her angry. Jinyu is very powerful, Fuekang spoke for his daughter, when I captured Zhou, I captured the whole world in my hands. In the future, I will definitely be more powerful than Nuan, than His Majesty. The Supreme Emperor was silent for a moment, looked at Chu Qinghuang, and then at Fuekang, and finally understood that these two people were determined to establish an imperial concubine and allow Ziki to continue the system of empress rule. In fact, he has abdicated, and logically he should not meddle in other people's affairs, but after all, 11 Qi Zhongshan was passed from his hands to Qinghuang, so he should still have some room to speak. Thinking like this, he cleared his throat, Qinghuang, look at the 4 powerful countries in the world. Nowadays, all men are respected. Even the powerful ones like Dongling only have 1 queen, and she didn't reign for a long time. There have been 3 queens in the history of Dongling. The Supreme Emperor choked, although this is true, it is not a continuous succession, but because of fate, Dongling will only produce a queen in 200 years. Ziki can also break the system that other countries can break. Chu Qinghuang carried her daughter to the dining table and motioned for the Supreme Emperor and concubine Xian to sit down. Whether it is because of fate or other reasons, at least Dongling dares to break it, so they are strong. After a pause, besides, the reason why the last queen reigned for a short time was because they had no ambition and were indifferent to power. The reason why this emperor is not a princess is because their first child happens to be a prince. If it is a princess, maybe Dongling is really a queen in power today. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix.